Good evening, everyone. Welcome, Villainous, David. See, you guys are already in the chat. So I'm here with Nico Serpico, and we're going to be talking about the media, which, as you know, is fully trustworthy, just like science, which is fully trustworthy. That's why we only have to just follow the science, and we have to trust the media because the media would never be infiltrated by groups like the CIA and would never spread fake news, as you know. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about, are there any Muslim influences? Is there bias towards Islam? And yeah, I've got Nicolas Serpico, or sorry, well, Nico Serpico on the channel today to discuss this. So welcome, Nico. And also for those of you who are listening and watching, thank you for being here. Please like, share, subscribe, all of those YouTube things. You know, that's very important. It does help to grow the channel. I'm trying to get to 20,000, and yeah, it'll help. And also, I've got to say, very important YouTube things like remember to floss twice a day and brush your teeth, especially after meals, because things like that really it establishes credibility. But go for it, Nico. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Lloyd. Yeah, I'm elated that you've got me here. On my channel, you probably, I don't know if you've seen any of my antics on my own channel, but I definitely push the envelope by design. Take a completely different approach than you do. Yours is a more pure academic approach. Mine is trying to appeal to, well, victims of mass media, long story short. And so I use their mode of communication, which is just being belligerent and obnoxious to get their attention. you so far, I'm not having a lot of success. I only have 150 subs, and I don't think any of them are my target audience. But
Then
stuff like
change the
that.
approach. I mean,
Yeah,
all of us have to make adaptations, even myself, I think.
yeah.
And you spoke of victims of media. I I used to believe a lot of things. I bought into a number of things that I was sold and told by both people who appear on the left and the right. And I would say that obviously on the left you have far more propaganda since they're openly embracing socialism. But there was a time that I believed a lot of things, and once I started doing some actual reading history, I realized I was misled, that I was had the wrong impression. I was laboring under false conceptions, and that made me angry. So I started my channel as a way to speak out against all of the falsehoods that I was discovering in media.
Mm. That's exactly where I'm at. That's exactly where I'm at. And in fact, I was challenged around the turn of the century by another media buff, somebody I consider to be a bit of a mad genius. But he basically asked me a simple question about the cross and how that's portrayed in movies, what's being presented at the time, or which character is being introduced at the time. And since the turn of the century, I started paying attention to that. A few years later, it became very evident that in Pavlovian fashion, people were being conditioned to hate Christianity. And a few more years of that, it was just basically every time I watched the movie, I was subjecting myself to being browbeat to death. Um, and then a bunch of other experiences. I mean, the 20 teens, the BLM, and all this other nonsense followed. Lockdown. So here we are. But around 2020, I tried to do like a doctoral level research on this, empirical, quantitative, literally movies, choosing only the movies that were the most watched for the past
Mhm.
half century, and basically gauging uh, whether they're presenting a short list of Christian terms and Christian symbols, in either a positive or negative light through a Christian perspective. And I mean, my framework was pretty tight, pretty solid, which is hard to say in any research project. And professors were amazed by the framework, but I couldn't get it to take off. So that's why I ended up on YouTube instead. you know, the poor man's academia, I guess. Um, and so yeah, uh, I've been dedicating this past couple of 2 3 years now to doing that. Part of that is Islam because there's a lot of dawah, and that's what we'll be focusing on today.
Right.
Hollywood specifically.
Hollywood Dawa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's controversial to say that we have a lot of garbage, the woke message, coming out of Hollywood. I first felt there was a problem living in South Africa when I was a teenager, and you would see this one message being pushed in the media, in the movies and the TV shows. You can be anything you want to be. In America, you can be anything. And I used to think, no, no, you can't. No, that's a false message. You can't be anything. At some point, you you know that's just a fairy tale. You have to be realistic about where you can go. Sure, you can improve your circumstances, but to be anything, well, now man can be a woman, and a man can be a furry, and he can be a you can change genders 3 times a day, and yeah, because you can be anything, and then that's the logical conclusion of that message.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel the same way about atheism and how that leads to the occult. I've been saying that for a long time, and everybody thought I was crazy for saying that. But now here we are. Everyone's being openly, I don't know, pagan, I guess you can say.
Well, atheism is really just a rebranded form of paganism. This is something that shouldn't surprise anyone. It's really just a return to Greek and Roman paganism of 2,500 or more years ago.
The Renaissance. Yeah, I get it. So speaking of Western influence, let's get to the presentation because yeah, we started a bit late, and I've got a lot of slides. Most of the slides I'm just going to be zipping through, but I want to go ahead and basically look at these two. These are two monikers that I saw when I was volunteering in Greece with this historical mass migration. That was around 2015. Things were still flowing back then quite, I mean, heavily. Hundreds, if not thousands per day were traveling just through Greece alone. I have a good friend who was, I don't want to say the name of the organization, but a prominent organization that was in charge of that. And he would literally establish a database for keeping track of those things. So it's just mind-boggling what was being funded. So something that I saw in those experiences was no borders and shows solidarity, sprinkled all over the place, being put all over these NGOs, orgs on Facebook and so on. And I could see, well, where they were taking us. And, you know, it's kind of along the lines of what we just mentioned with that whole John Lennon song, Imagine, which is really popular, one of my childhood favorites until I grew up. Had a kind of a spiritual awakening on my own, which we might talk about. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious. What does the audience feel? Do they feel like Hollywood is what some Muslims complain about? Does Hollywood portray Muslims negatively with prejudice? In other words, falsely, they slander Muslims? Or does Hollywood actually promote Islamic ideas and ideologies and constructs? Or are they just there for the money? I mean, that's something that we hear in a lot of circles. Well, they're just doing it for the money, and the money dictates their next step. Are they neutral,
I don't
essentially?
think it's purely about the money. If you look at these woke movies that are flopping left and right, they were doing them because they had built up a war chest, and they were doing it for the for ideological reasons, despite the fact that you've got very, very upset shareholders who are losing money hand over fist. So, to a very large degree, it was purely done ideologically, and they didn't care about the losses of money.
I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, in a lot of the movie review things, they always go to the whole discussion about follow the money trail, and that will, you know. But as you said, that's not the case. I would argue against that. Also, when it comes to losses, I mean, how much of that is tax write-off? Those people might argue about advertising expenses. How much of that is a tax write-off, at least in the United States?
Yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, even the losses, the reported losses, I still have to wonder even if those are even actual losses.
yeah. So yeah, let's dive into the presentation. I see you've
Okay.
got 30 something
A lot.
slides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So slide number 2. Is that, let's see, I think it's slide
All right,
number,
just let's go to slide number 2. Yeah.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. I got you. All right. We could skip it if you want. But basically, yeah. So Hollywood itself, the land itself was actually purchased by Jewish people. The first studios were created by Jewish people, Cecil B. DeMille and Lasky and Griffith and so on. So again, I want to be extremely careful because there's a lot of what they call anti-Semitic sentiments that are extremely fascist going on right now. People are being forced, whether they like it or not, to choose two sides, either Judaism or Islam, which I'm completely against, especially as a Christian. So I don't want to be part of the problem, but I am the kind of person that is kind of a full disclosure kind of person. So if I'm going to speak about the roots of Hollywood, I have to be, honest about it and talk about who established it. In fact, there was a 2021 museum exhibit that got criticized by the ADL for excluding Jews as the creators or founders of Hollywood, probably because they were scared to be called anti-Semitic, and they therefore were called anti-Semitic by the ADL. They spent a couple of years to modify that exhibit. And now, again, after including the Jews, now they're being again called anti-Semitic for what they're saying about the Jews. So, I mean, when it comes to this discussion, for whatever reason, most of the ADL, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. So, but yeah, but undeniably, historically, it's a fact that Hollywood was established by Jews. Let's do the next slide. Okay. Slide number 3, I think.
There it is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a controversial film, but it's one that's, again, according to many sources, it's one that reestablished the Ku Klux Klan. It's said that, or reported, that the Ku Klux Klan had died around the turn of the 20th century. Kind of like around the turn of the 20th century, it had died for all intents and purposes. And I've spent a lot of time in the quote South, so I could tell you firsthand that it was pretty much dead. It was non-existent. But this movie in 1915, produced by Griffith, who was a member of the Hollywood Masonic Temple, had basically spent $110,000 what some call the first full feature, which is not completely accurate, but it's credited for being that, probably because it's 3 hours long. But there was another one by Paramount Pictures called The Squaw Man. 1914 was actually the first feature, but at any rate. So yeah, basically, after a lot of controversy when this film came out, again, the controversy came from a black editor from the, not the Boston Globe, The Guardian. He was also a member of a Freemason organization. I believe it was, what was it, Kappa? It was Phi Beta Kappa. He was the first black member of that organization. And again, with all the controversy, people got curious, and they had 3 million people go watch this film, and nationwide. Again, this is 1915, people, the very beginning of Hollywood. As far as the Hollywood Masonic Temple, there was actually this location of the first Oscars. The next Oscars were then housed across the street. Other things are being filmed there, including Jimmy Kimmel's TV show. Jimmy Kimmel, if you're not familiar, he was in a game show called When Ben Stein's Money and The Man Show.
He's an alleged comedian.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm not a fan of his either, but yeah. So he's got evidently Masonic roots. He's also part of this Masonic temple, Hollywood Temple, and so on. Also, you may have heard of a trilogy called The Godfather. That was they had mafia advisors when it came to the production of that film, and they were talking about mafia influence and how they were pushing Hollywood producers around to get their way. So those that believe that the mafia is related to Freemasonry well, then even in the 20th century, it gets evolved in that way too. But I'm demonstrating here that at the very beginning, from the birth of the nation, what some are calling the first full feature, um, they were involved. All right, well, we can go on to the next one. All right, so here we have, let me make sure, okay, me, yeah, this is about me. I was kind of, included this slide in case people don't know too much about me, just a couple of quick notes. I have had theological formation for over a decade, which didn't end as well as it should have. I had I was raised by mass media uh, extensively, literally raised by it. So at some point in my life, I became atheist without trying to be or want to be. I wasn't mad at God or anything. I just a product of mass media, and therefore I stopped believing. I thought anything supernatural or spiritual was silly and would involuntarily laugh if anyone had mentioned anything like that. And it was through Tai Chi that I actually had a spiritual awakening unsuspectedly. Went into shock, literally, and got scared. Got the fear of God in me, essentially, and through that process. And then slowly but surely, went back to God, rediscovered God, got a calling, got into theological formation for a while. That began my academic career, where I started in education. I got recognition for psychology, instructional technology. I've been involved in student film production, student orgs, took courses on film production, been part of a movie, been on set for TV shootings and movies and so on, Iron Man 3, the list goes on. So I've been around it a fair bit. Not as much as some. I'm no Martin Scorsese, but I've got a fair idea of how this stuff works. Yeah, I'm also in the process. I've been in the process for a while trying to publish children's books, but right now I'm stuck on that. But enough about me. I think that's all I got to say about me and my credentials here. Okay, so 5, and this stuff should be pretty elementary to you guys. I'm sure everyone here has heard of the Pavlov experiment, also the Bobo doll. Those are the 2 most common ones. Just in case, let me briefly go over it. The Pavlov experiment is where a dog he rang a bell so the dog can hear it, and then he would ring the bell and present food, and the dog would start salivating, and then he would ring the bell, but the food was absent, but the dog continued to salivate. Some of us can probably relate to that if we've seen like a McDonald's commercial, for example. We hear the ding, 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 ding. I mean, there's a reason to spend all that money on those jingles. It's to get us salivating. That's just one example. Then the Bobo doll experiment. With this one, again, with all of academia, just so you'll know, is controversial. In fact, academics, or at least some academics, look forward to the controversy so they can be peer reviewed. But this is another one that's controversial, and I don't see why. The argument is that the children were set up in a position where they would, of course, do what they're seeing on television. And this is what the experiment was. They put a bunch of different toys in a room and let the children go in there freely without any direction. And on the TV, there's one TV there, they had a woman with this Bobo doll you see in the center, and she was taking a hammer and hitting it and doing, punching it and striking the Bobo doll in different ways. And so the children, seeing the person on the screen, mimic that behavior. And so it represents how, basically, how can I put it, a monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. We like to mimic what we see, even if it's on television. And there's other research that shows, and when it's real people, we're more likely to do that versus cartoons. But these days, cartoons are so realistic. I kind of wonder what that research looks like, even for animations. The Stanford experiment, there was a movie made about that. That was quite intense. Basically, people pretending to be prison guards and prisoners. And that got out of hand, and they had to stop it early. Some people might wonder, how is that relevant to us today. And so there was an incident around, I think it was 2016, basically when Trump got elected. This guy set himself on fire in
Yeah.
protest.
I
Yeah,
just want to mention something due
sure.
to that Stanford experiment. It's lately it's being considered as a fraud, as something that
Right.
is nothing like what actually occurred. And one of the participants admitted that he was faking it. So, the professor turned evil. The students did not, and I think so. So there's a lot of fraud involved with that and misreporting. So there's some questions around it these days. It's not considered legitimate anymore.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, all of academia, all the research, all of it. You're not going to find a single research project that is not flawed. It's impossible. Uh, yeah. So yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I've heard of that, and I'm not surprised one bit.
I
But
mean, you can read in the journal Nature, for instance, that I think it's well accepted in academia, although it's not maybe as well known in public, but something like half of all scientific research that is published is fraudulent.
yeah, I would say more. I would say that's
So
that's a
yeah, but at
generous
least
number.
I think it's acknowledged in academia that significant portion of scientific papers and research that are published these days are
Lloyd,
fraudulent, are biased
yeah,
for money, for whatever reasons. They're not repeatable. So a large portion of what we call science is completely faked.
yeah,
I don't think that's controversial. That's acknowledged within science.
yeah, Lloyd. Can I be frank? And I would even take it further. I wouldn't even go further than these days. I kind of wonder about the institution of academia itself, and I've been in a lot of them in and out for the past couple of decades. Professional student, what they call me. So, and abroad. Yeah, I mean, it's absolute crap. It's forgive my frankness, but to put in layman's, it's one big circle jerk. If you're not inside that inner circle, then you're kind of like me. You're an idealist that is trying to get published, but instead doing content on YouTube. you know,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Let me actually get it back. Let me go to my screen share and just change my screen sharing mode. Because let me end my screen share and then reshare because I'm only sharing a portion of the screen. Let me just do that again. I'll just do this. Now then I'll bring this in. Just to mention a couple of things here. This is in The Economist. Now this is just off the cuff. I don't have the original articles that I am referring to here, but there's a worrying amount of fraud in medical research, and this is not just in medical research. And there's another one. It's time to get serious about research fraud. So, there is a huge significant amount. I mean, estimates are 25% on the low end, and I've seen the journal Nature, I think, put out a stat of about 50%. So yeah, we've got some serious problems in academia in terms of
yeah,
fraud.
to say the least. And there's a lot of people that are addressing that. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories and how you feel about that, but it just so happens that a lot of these groups align each other with that, and I kind of referenced that subtly in his presentation. But it's interesting that they're all, to me, have one common denominator, and they're all anti-Christian, regardless of what group they belong to.
Yeah,
Um,
at least
yeah.
10,000 sham papers last year, and that's the tip of the iceberg.
Mm. Yeah, all that money, people, all that grant money, and so on, for shams. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, so Project Mockingbird. Oh, sorry.
You go back up, yeah.
Yeah, that's well, actually, I mean, yeah, basically, I don't know. Again, this is a conspiracy theory stuff that I've just heard recently, and I've looked into it because I felt validated. I'm taking again a different approach. I'm taking judge by the fruits, the outcomes kind of thing, a quantitative approach where people like Jay Dyer, get into the whole academic thing. They look into this research. That's the first time I heard about Project Mockingbird and MK Ultra. I looked into it myself. It turns out these are um, undisclosed documents. These are federal documents. I do have links, but I can't share the links myself in the chat.
Well,
Maybe.
well, look, I mean, I'll just throw in a little bit, then we can move to the next slide. But the Project Mockingbird, a mockingbird repeats things. You tell it something, it repeats it. So this is a method of parroting. Think last week where after Kamala Harris's interview with Brett Baer, there were about 10 articles published the next day where all these editors, at least 10 that I know of at least, where these editors would use the word testy in the headline or the subheadline.
Oh
She has a
wow.
testy interview. She has a testy interview. You've all seen the YouTube videos where you've got dozens, literally dozens and dozens of news website of news broadcasts where the talking heads are repeating exactly the same lines, even though these are dozens and dozens of different organizations. So clearly there's a script. And of course, we all know from the Twitter files, from the Facebook files, from Mike Benz's fantastic talk 2 weeks ago, that the media is infiltrated by the CIA and other interests. So I don't think anyone is shocked or surprised by that. I think that's well acknowledged now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's good to hear. Yeah, and again, yeah, another example was the whole Orson Welles War of the Worlds radio broadcast and the impact that had, and the lockdown.
Right.
Yeah, and the internet, how much that's controlled us, and we went against our own common sense. Yeah, this is just a really quick overview, kind of a parallel between media and this, some of its themes. Included, of course, would be sexism, racism. Those of us that are in these circles are all completely familiar with Islam and how it promotes all of these things. Killing people, the whole killing yourself. I mean, pro-drugs, and of course the sexual deviancy and all that. And the whole thing, again, we're being censored heavily. So I'm trying to, since I'm on your channel, I'm actually self-censoring right now, which I hate. I never do that anywhere. But I want to make sure I don't put you in jeopardy. So I'm not going to use these words. You can see them on screen. So these are all, again, these are all facts. Whether you're looking at Reliance of the Traveler, you're looking at the Hadith, Quran itself, the Life of Muhammad, whatever you're looking at, these are all part of Islam, and also, of course, part of Hollywood for decades.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can add cannibalism into the mix here,
Yes.
because
Thank you for
they're
bringing that
talking
up.
now from eating the bugs. They're now going to, well, isn't it time that we started to eat dead people? That's actually a thing, which is crazy. So yeah, I mean, all of these seriously, what's the word we would use here? All of these seriously
Satanic.
debauched,
Yeah.
immoral things are
Yeah.
being discussed by the left. I mean, that they are descending into evil.
Exactly. And thank you for saying that, Lloyd. I actually wanted to bring that up, but I was worried you could call that a conspiracy theory. So that's why I intentionally left it out.
No, I've seen it discussed by very credible sources, by genuine historians and politicians and media figures. It's not a theory. It is happening.
Okay, so I feel validated right now. You just validated. For years, I've been trying to tell people they're pushing us towards cannibalism. Again, this is one of the major themes that Hollywood pushes: is cannibalism for a very long time now. And here we are. I mean, I believe, anyways, I don't want to get off on tangents, but yeah, we are
Well,
right.
so Chinko is asking, are there any Muslim scholars that reject the reliance of the traveler? Only the ones that are embarrassed by it. Those are the only ones that reject it, and only for long enough to deny it and then get on with their lives and keep using it again. Sorry, go on.
No, that's fine. Yeah, let me. We're going to get off on a tangent if we keep going down this track. So let's just keep going. Let's just go on to the next slide.
Next
But
slide.
yeah, it's
Yeah, but
so
this is true. I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
There's these things, we see them happening in the world. They're manifesting in the world. They are in the media, and we saw these stories coming up, and they become prevalent in the movies. And is life creating art, or is art creating life, or is it just collusion? One has to ask.
So quickly looking at print, and now we're getting into the specific theme of dawah, of promoting Islam here. Now, again, Muslims continually complain that Hollywood or media is wrongfully slandering them, is a prejudice towards them, and is always they're always portraying them negatively. I'm going to demonstrate here that's an absolute lie, and the people that are complaining about that should be investigated for whether or not they're supporting terrorism, and I'll get into that. So you can see here some examples through the decades, some very popular ones. Malcolm X, a very prominent Islamic figure. Mike Tyson, now very public about his affiliations with Islam. Colin Kaepernick, do you guys remember that guy? The whole kneel down guy?
Yeah.
His girlfriend. I know why his girlfriend is Muslim, but just so happens. I gotta wonder. I didn't do too much of a deep dive in himself. I didn't see any Islamic ties with him, but I got to wonder if that played a role too. That's a
Of course
stretch.
it did. I mean, I would say yes.
As a man, of course we. But again, that's argumentative. I'm just putting that out there for food for thought.
And also,
Um,
these people, when you say Islam, they're not necessarily Orthodox Muslim like Sunni. Many of them are affiliated to the Nation of Islam, which, to put it
mm,
mildly, these people are whack jobs. Their beliefs are nothing short of ludicrously laughable. I have two videos on my channel about this guy, Malcolm X, and the Nation of Islam, and you should watch them. They're short; they're like 3 to 5 minutes each. It's the Nation of Islam has the most bogus ideas you've ever heard.
yeah. So pretty much we all, I think we all can agree on this one. I just wanted to put it out there so we can move on to the next slide just for the sake of time.
So, yeah, no, I mean, you've got also the Communist Manifesto. I mean, I'll try
I
the
slipped that
Communist
in. Yeah.
Manifesto. This thing, obviously, this is not. If you look at James Lindsay's work, I mean, he's calling this now a religious work. It's not a discussion on economics. So that they try to sell it as that. Remember, they first called this this was the Communist Catechism, right? Because it was meant to be a religious catechism, which made which took the idea of the Catholic catechism and introduced this new religion called socialism or Marxist socialism, Marx's flavor or brand of socialism. And it introduced the catechism. It was Engels who told him, look, let's not call it that. It's too blunt. It's too blatant what it is. Call it the Communist Manifesto and move away from the religious naming, because this is a religious system. And yeah, and of course we can talk one day about the overlap and the similarities between communism and Islam.
Well, that's why I included it in there, but I don't want to get off on that. But yeah, thank you for saying that. Um, so yeah, I've got some links. I don't know again how to share these, but yeah, basically for the MK Ultra, the Project Mockingbird here again with Project Veritas. Let me just say for your audience, it's easy to find if you like do a search on YouTube there with Project Veritas, NPR, Muslim Brotherhood. If you type those three things in there, you'll find a 3-part series where they did undercover investigation on NPR, pretending to be the Muslim Brotherhood, and basically got NPR saying that, yeah, they can dictate whatever NPR is going to report for certain amounts of money, which probably is no surprise to us these days. But, back in, I think this was 2012, give or take. Yeah, it was controversial. Yeah, the taxi to the dark side. In the documentaries, you've got to wonder. I don't have. This is probably a research project in itself, but I got to wonder how many of these documentaries are actually pro-Islam, because there's a lot of pro-Islam documentaries out there, especially these days. But let's look at this one. Taxi to the Dark Side. The description is exposes the haunting details of USA's torture and interrogation practices during the war in Afghanistan. So is this pro-Islam, anti-America? You know, again, the second documentary is No End in Sight, which is described as a comprehensive look at the Bush administration's conduct of the Iraq War and its occupation of the country. All right. So, again, is this pro-Islam, anti-Islam? We all know Fahrenheit 9/11.
Well, here's the thing. If I can just add something in there, I mean, look, everyone claims that they invaded that they invaded Iraq because of Israel pulling the strings. The simple fact is that Saudi Arabia wanted America to go into Iraq and take out Saddam Hussein. He was a rival of the Saudi regime. And Bush was deep in with the Saudis. I've covered that in my Arab Lobby series, like just how tight the Bush family, just how infiltrated the Muslim Brotherhood were into the Bush government, as well as the Saudis. They George Bush was a little dancing monkey for the Saudis. Saudis were very much in control, and he was at least, that we know of, 1.5, $1.6 billion deep into the pockets of the Saudis. So there was a lot of Saudi manipulation, but of course, when you have control of the media, you'd say, no, it's the Israelis, it's this, it's that. These guys are floating on money. And so, yeah, we don't look at the Saudi involvement in things or the Iranian involvement in things.
Or
And
the
of course, Michael Moore, I don't trust a word that guy says
no,
anymore, though.
amen. Yeah, and I hate to admit, I bought into all of his stuff, hook, line, and sinker back in the day. But yeah, but yeah, also money from the Far East. Again, I don't want to get off on too many tangents, but I want people to start thinking about BRICS and what's going on globally with that and how much influence they've had, especially media, especially in the 21st century, but late
Right.
20th too. Let's see. Yeah, The Art of Imposture is one that was actually banned. I've watched it. If you go to the website, there's actually a couple of documentaries available. It's quite intense. I don't encourage people to watch it because it will scar you for life, but I'm not overstating that. But if you're someone who's really curious or whatever, you will see people how they're actually being treated by these Muslims. So it's just a bunch of clips of people being massacred, basically. It's like a face of death, Islamic style. So,
Mhm.
but there's also a narration by Osama Dakdak, who cites a lot of scripture and so on. So I honestly don't know what to make of that one. I'm kind of curious how people who have seen Art of Imposture, how they feel about it. Have you watched it?
I've spoken to the creator of it, the director, or the guy who made it. I've spoken to him for a while, but I haven't watched it. I've seen. I mean, I guess I'm familiar with it, but I also don't necessarily want to lay
Yeah,
awake at night with these
exactly.
brain-stabbing images in my head.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it's a very fair warning, people. Curiosity killed the cat. I mean, you will be scarred for life if you do watch it. Yeah, thank you. So, there again, media is. The question here is Islam being portrayed, or Muslims, are they being portrayed negatively, positively, or neutrally? Is it all about the money? You can see here a bunch of different examples of how Muslims are being portrayed positively. Um, Again, the first example, this is a historical Islamic account portrayed as Galilee, an action kind of series. Then there's the transplant series where a guy, I believe he's coming from Pakistan, comes and he ends up luckily getting a job as a doctor. Um, okay, so it's pro hijra, if I can say that, if I'm allowed to say that. The FBI series. I mean, yeah, the FBI, as we all know, according to mass media, at least, the FBI is the worst organization on the planet. The CIA is the only a secret agency that does anything bad on this planet. Um, Meanwhile, they've got this main character who's very jihadi looking, who's the protagonist of this series.
Really, drop a one in the chat if you think the FBI is trustworthy, and drop a two if you think the FBI is corrupt for many years now. Because man, I'm gonna put my vote, and I've dropped a two there. That's my vote. The FBI is, and I think the American Department of Justice is hopelessly corrupt and biased. And also, we know that they've had in their training on extremism, they've had all of the Muslim Brotherhood has so heavily infiltrated the government that all comments, everything related to Islam and everything, it's all been sanitized, stripped out, and you're not allowed to say nasty things about Muslims anymore. So even the CIA, that's all been taken out. You're supposed to sing Kumbaya and hug a tree when it comes to Islamic terror.
Wow. Um, yeah. So Disney, by the way, we're going to see some samples of that. And this is going to early to mid 20th century here. They pro-Islamic. Marvel, by the way, is owned by Disney owns all kinds of things. It's quite insane. And Sony's pursuing. I'm getting off on tangents here. Forgive me, but yeah, Sony's been pursuing buying out Disney. There's murmurs that they kind of already have, but anyway. Um, yeah, so Miss Marvel is again a Muslim character, a Muslim family portrayed in a very positive light. Even the family members that have no superpowers, They're positive. This X-Men character, obviously, all kinds of Islamic superhero series that are all positive and heroic or very powerful. Um, the Iron Sheik when I was young. This is back in the WWF days, if you guys ever heard of that. This is wrestling, the fake wrestling, right? So he was one of my personal favorites. Again, I was raised on American media, so I had no idea. Um, I Dream of Jeannie, mid 20th century series. Again, came out this at the same time that we had Bewitched, also blonde hair, blue eyed actress, star of that series. But I Dream of Jeannie, yeah, I mean, the prize of Islamic right hand possessions there, dressed very provocatively. Um,
Thunderous One, Miss Marvel's superpower is that she has equal intelligence to a Muslim man.
Boy, ouch.
Hysterical.
Oy vey. Uh,
What happened to regular? Yeah, I mean, these days, at least here in Poland, my nephew, I sit with him sometimes for hours. I mean, he's a growing kid, so you read to him and you sing songs with him and you watch cartoons with him and at least we watch things like Paw Patrol and stuff about firemen. But I mean, his parents. I mean, here in Poland, at least, this LGBT nonsense
uh,
hasn't made a dent really. So thank heavens for
oh,
that.
that's great. That's great to hear.
You
That's
know what's
that's
crazy? I was amazed looking at his curriculum because he started school like 2 months ago in September. He started school. And it's kind of like preschool. It's not preschool. It's like your basic school introduction. And they do 3 hours, I think, of religious instruction every week.
wow,
Yeah, they
wow,
do religion. So they cover, Jesus and the angels and God and the Bible and the New Testament. Crazy stuff.
wow. I'm speechless. It's like
I
bizarre
don't,
world to
you
me when I hear that.
wouldn't see that in America, for instance.
No,
Like, whereas here they are taught religion, they taught church and Jesus and morals and like, wow.
yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's inspiring. Yeah. Meanwhile, we have the UFC. That's mixed martial arts, the latest craze. Doing all their stuff in the Middle East. So, um, yeah, where are we at? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
you
so there's
have
this
a,
positive image. I mean, look here, he's by the sword of Islam, and you've got these very positive images of Islam.
mhm,
So they are trying to create a false image. They're trying to prettify an image of. So you allow it in. It's the Trojan horse, basically. It's what
yeah.
it is. It's the Trojan horse.
And that was another one of my favorite characters, the Arabian Night. I like the anyways. So yeah, the Sheik. This is a silent film, 1921. Um, you can argue that this is both ways, but if it's showing both sides, of positive and negative of Islamic culture, then you can't really say it's anti-Islamic. You got to argue that it's neutral. I would argue that it's more pro than anything. The
Mhm.
theme of this story is that the Sheik, he's he's basically a bandit. He has slaves. He kidnaps the main actress that we see down here in the bottom in purple. He kidnaps her. She's from, I think, a British visitor that's naive about Islam, and so he basically makes her his slave. Um, yeah, spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you this whole story real quickly. Basically, yeah, what happens is there's a conflict between him and another tribe. He becomes injured, terminally ill, and now she's got the nightingale effect, and she's uh, basically, yeah, she's fallen in love with the guy, you know, and I was just, crying over him and all that, and then he comes to, and then they live happily ever after. That's the Sheik, 1921, early Hollywood, and the son of the
That's
Sheik,
insane,
obviously.
right?
Yeah.
Romanticizing. Wow. I mean, the turnaround started though. Just to mention to the audience, and we discussed this just briefly, you and me. Just for the audience, Nico and I didn't really have a chance to discuss the content of the slide, so it's a surprise to me as well. But it just sounded like an interesting premise, and I thought, we should do this. But briefly, there was a movie that I actually watched. I watched a significant portion of it maybe 15, 20 years ago. I don't know when it came out, but somewhere in that time period. called Real Bad Arabs, and I believed it. And it's about how Hollywood vilifies Muslims. And this Dr. Jack Shaheen, this academic, was going on about Muslims are the bad guys, the terrorists, the bank robbers, the guys always getting killed because they are evil and bad, and we need to do. And he was, and I felt guilty about it because I believed it. And I went, yes, we're doing it. And now I realize, look, man, it's the stereotype because it's true.
Mhm.
So yeah, it started here when the turnaround started here. This was the campaign to turn it around, and you can't say bad things about brown people. Now you've got to vilify white men.
I would love to if I don't know. I don't want to outwear my welcome. I definitely want to put you on the spot, but just some food for thought. And personally, I'm not a biggest fan of doing reviews, but I did. I think you shared that with me, and I did skim through it. I didn't watch it. It's really I don't want to subject myself to that yet unless I have to. But if you'd be willing to do another stream to do a review of that, I would love to tear this guy a new one, step by
Okay.
step, everything. Great, wonderful.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, let's just keep it factual. And I
Yeah,
mean, this is something new for my channel. I mean, I try not to be pigeonholed. So yeah, but let's go on. So I mean, this
absolutely.
goes way back. It's amazing that this positive message about Islam, this romanticizing of it, goes way back.
Yeah.
So the seeds of it are found a century plus ago.
I mean, if you watch the film, you'll see even like when this sheik he enters his village, they're treating him like absolute royalty. Everyone's kissing up to him and all these things. So it's quite yeah, it's exaggerated um, their portrayal and how positive it is, even though it's showing that there's robbers and so on and so forth. Um, it's yeah, if you watch, you'll see it's all really positive or mostly positive. Again, Walt Disney. This one is a bit of a stretch. This is I've presented it to a couple people, and a lot of people are just I don't know about that. But we'll look at other Walt Disney examples where it's outright pro-Islam. But this is from a 1944 film, as you see, the three caballeros.
Caballeros.
Thank you. Love it. I was wondering if someone would correct me about that. All right. So yeah. Yeah. So basically, you can see that this looks like Baroque. I mean, this is a bit of a stretch. I'm not saying that it is definitively Baroque.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. But look at the church in the same movie. Um, isn't that quite Islamic? With a Christian church that seems to be, or is that my misinterpretation of that little
I mean,
sequence?
this minaret on top. You mean the minaret
Yes.
idea?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be Orthodox, it could be Russian, it could be sort of Armenian style, which was
Yeah.
influenced by the architecture of Turkey. But you make a fair point. I mean, it's quite a juxtaposition compared to this here in the middle. You
Mhm.
know, there is a. I mean, look,
It,
it's
it's a
sometimes
stretch.
it's subtle. I mean, but yeah, there's the imagery seems disconnected, so you let it in because there's no overt messaging, so you don't what you can get someone to imagine, they don't resist, right? When you try to give them facts, figures, and data, people reject it. But when you can make them imagine something, then they accept it and it sinks in, and then later on you can build upon that imagery. That would be one way to do some sort of subliminal manipulation.
Yes, they've done a lot of that, especially when it comes to the cross. A lot. All right, we can go on to the next slide. I just want to introduce that as
This is a
a
very common good point here. It echoes things I've said on the channel. The media's main narrative is individuality about the last 30 years. Yeah, you can be anything you want. It's about you. Find yourself, follow your heart. And it's now turned into pronouns and trannies, quite bluntly, you know. And I mean, go back a few years and you'll see about factory farming, the whole battery farming, factory farming. Farming is bad. Farmers are evil. Farming, killing the cows, that's bad, right? Which they try to paint all farming, all farmers as evil because they painted farming as factory farming,
right.
right? So you've got a few of these bad apples, let's say, and they try to paint literally everybody. Now, these governments in Europe are literally shutting down farms, killing, paying to slaughter animals, viable animals, perfectly healthy animals, and they want to destroy farms and replace them with housing for migrants or because of too much nitrogen in the soil. So it's gone from this kind of farming is bad to all farming is bad. so they can now starve you to death. It's a death cult. So it's a slippery slope, and you end up in the most absurd places.
Yeah. All right. So
Yes, that's a flying donkey, Just Janice. That is a flying donkey, and it's an interesting point. I mean, it leaves you to think. Yeah, you accept it as a kid, so when you learn the story of Muhammad and the flying donkey, then you go, yeah, I know about this. This is good. I need to convert to this religion, right?
yeah, the flying. I mean, I was like that myself as a kid with the flying carpet, the lamp, the
Yeah,
magic lamp. Yeah.
good point. Good point.
Yeah. All
Steve
right.
Gordon, thank you very much. And you can thank my guest as well. It's not only me. I will be returning to more solo streams on my own content lately, but I've just had people approach me and ask me if they can do things on my streams. So lately I've had many guests, but thank you, Steve.
All right. So I'm going to break this down to three categories of Hollywood films and whether or not it's again, are they portraying Muslims in negative light, or are they pushing Islam, or is it just neutral? This category is whether or not these American movies are portraying U.S. military in a positive light. So this is a Clint Eastwood film, really popular, one of my favorites. But a spoiler alert: does anyone know what happens at the end of this film?
He gets murdered. I mean, they don't show it,
Yeah.
but he gets killed by a student he's training.
Right. So that's I mean, a little wah wah at the end. I mean, maybe a bit stretched, but I wouldn't know if the way it ends is definitely not a happy ending. They could have just left that out, or something to that effect, or better tribute or something. I don't know, but I don't like the way the movie ended. Even though most of the movie portrayed him as someone who was well skilled and was able to take out one of the most notorious uh, Muslim terrorists, snipers. So, all right, let's go on to the next one. Yeah, I'm gonna try to zip through these. I'm gonna spend like maybe 1 to 2 minutes on each from here on out. 12 Strong, again, another one of my favorites.
I
Inspiring,
really enjoyed it too.
yeah. But again, how does this end? Or is it like a Delta Force? Now there's a good one. Sci-fi.
I actually know someone who knows the guys, and I believe I spoke to one of the guys who was on this mission.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so I didn't realize at the time, but I believe that I've actually met and spoken with one of the guys, and he might have been in a training class I did at one time, or one I attended. But yeah, and none of them died though. But they do show that the people they're with, there's good Muslims and bad Muslims, and we should just avoid the bad ones, and the good ones are good.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm starting with a weak argument, just so you'll know. All right, we'll go to the next one. Zero Dark 30. I imagine everyone's heard of this one. Um, yeah, so it's interesting that this one, it talks about, in retrospect, a pretty historical moment. And you got to, without getting too much into politics, it's kind of interesting that they had the guy in their sights for so long, but they didn't do anything for quite a while until it was pretty much an election year. That's all I really want to say about that. I don't want to get into another thing.
That's happened before. If you look at the when the Iranians occupied, you remember the movie Who Dares Wins with the SAS when they became famous for rescuing the hostages of the Iranian assault on the British embassy.
I hate to say I didn't watch that one.
Okay, so I might get one or two facts wrong here, but the general story as so is that they were able to go in much sooner and kill the terrorists and get the hostages out, but the American government, because they wanted to also time it, I think, for an election or for some other important event, they delayed it and let everyone suffer just so that they could get the glory at a given time. So this is not unusual that it's used for political purposes. They'll let them rot until they're ready because to do it
Hmm.
now would not be beneficial politically, something like
I'm,
that.
I'm going to ask you about that movie later on Skype, so don't forget it. All right, so we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Lloyd. And I apologize for, I feel like I'm bossing you around here. Please forgive me.
It's
I
okay.
was fumbling around with the tech earlier, so thank you for doing that. All right, so Lone Survivor 2013. Again, another one of my favorites, but I think, yeah, I mean, I got here. Spoiler alert. See the title for what happens. So, um, yeah, again, this is a weak argument, but it doesn't necessarily compared to movies like, let's say, Sylvester Stallone's Rambo. It's not. It's a again. I understand those works of fiction and all that, but Hollywood takes creative liberties all the time. Why these portrayals that don't always end so great, or something to that effect? All right, let's go on to the next one. Should be the next category. Yeah. Okay. So are the Kafir soldiers competent? Or so Black Hawk Down. Again, based on a historical moment, basically showing how U.S. soldiers are getting obliterated by a lesser power, arguably. Argo, another good one. Um, yeah. So yeah, I would say we're going down a list now of movies that just basically show the U.S. forces as, yeah, incompetent at best, incompetent if or evil or something to that effect. Yeah, no, yeah, we can go on to the next one if you want.
Okay, yeah.
Savior. This is one of my personal favorites. I think this was a HBO or Showtime original. I can't remember one of those channels. This was about the Bosnian War. No, this is another controversial one. Um, I would say this is a film that showed or came closest to showing the both sides of the story. In other words, pro-Islam or um, showing Christianity in the right light. What happens basically is the main character he becomes a mercenary, and he gets affected by an incident where his friend dies and he loses it, and he walks into a mosque and he starts shooting Muslims randomly while they're praying. That's how the movie starts. And then from there, he goes into Bosnia as American. He starts doing all these crazy things and witnessing all these crazy things. The Christian Serbs are being evil, and then later in the movie you'll see the Muslims being evil. And meanwhile, he's struggling with his own spiritual identity. Um, and I don't want to spoil it. It's actually a good movie. I'll just leave it at that. But I will say it arguably shows both sides, even though it shows Christians in a very horrendous light, the Serbs.
Actually, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get my facts wrong here. I worry about that, so I need to be careful. But in this case, I used to know a Serbian girl, and she's married to a friend of mine, and this was a war where they were prosecuting the war against the Christians, supporting the Muslims, and it was horrific. And I just found this one to be really backwards and upside down.
Mm.
And I mean, now you've got the UN. I mean, the UN is actively, the UNHCR and so on, actively supporting Hamas, turning
Yeah.
a blind eye to Hamas, providing material supplies to Hamas. Hamas workers actually being members of Hamas, leaders in Hamas, running cells in Hamas. And so, yeah, I mean, you've got some really odd things going on these days.
Yeah, and the gang at I hope you don't mind my plugging others, but the Cross and Crescent discussion group do a really good job of addressing the UN and UNRWA and all that, and how they're funding Islam. They're being sued for that, by the way. Thankfully, there's some pushback, and they're being exposed to some degree for that.
Right.
Courage Under Fire. This is
Really
again.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it back in the day too. Um, but yeah, basically throughout the movie, the U.S. soldiers are being portrayed as incompetent, wrongful. Um, they're at trial. Um, yeah, and of course it's the whole gender issue thing going on there too, which is standard Hollywood, especially these days. But yeah, just basically showing the U.S. military as evil. All right, we'll go to the next one. That's all I got for that. This is a post-traumatic stress disorder. I have, this is something that's kind of near and dear to me, a topic, so to speak. I befriended in my youth a Vietnam veteran who back then I was wearing Bomb Baghdad T-shirts. Again, a product of mass media. Had a subscription to Time magazine. So yeah, and he saw that in me, and he let me know what war is actually like. Started sharing all these stories with me, and then another Vietnam veteran, a father's friend, shared his pictures that he took and reenacted an incident uh, that he took those pictures, which I won't do because that reenactment literally scarred me for life. His reenactment of what he did, what he partook of, what he took pictures of, his reenactment scarred me for life. So you can imagine what it might have been like to actually be in that. So, yeah, sorry.
You know what might be a really good film is another one to mention that, but this one, yeah, this one similar. This one, people might really like this one. Rules of Engagement.
Yeah,
And it's also crazy that but another thing you see though is that the bad guys are white, the good guys are black. Generally speaking, I mean
yeah,
the one we just saw here, you know, good
yeah.
guy black, bad guys white. You know, there's a couple of potential messages there. I mean, not confirming anything, but just there's a couple of potential messages there.
That
Women
goes.
victims,
Yeah,
black men victims, white men bad.
yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you brought the woman victim thing. That's exactly why when it came to casting, you can see even here, they made sure to get someone that you can sympathize with, if not empathize with. Again, this is this is something that's very real. I'm actually anti-war because of those experiences with those two gentlemen that I just told you about. Um, and by the way, one of them taught me how to literally rip people's hearts out with my bare hands and so on and so forth. So, you know,
You're not going to be doing that.
no, of course I'm not gonna be doing that. I mean, you got to train for one thing, but yeah, even
Yeah.
if I could do it, yeah. But so yeah, I mean, it's just
Well, think of this though. One of the things that you've got here is that I think one of the potential messages they might be sending. Because look, I mean, some of these films were great, like Rules of Engagement. I thought it was a great film. I've watched some of these twice, right? Some of them three times. They're really good films. Like, so this is a genuinely good film.
mm,
However, um, there's also an anti-war message
yeah,
being sent. Don't support the military. Don't support your government. Which means that if you're not supporting your government and you are anti-patriot, then you are allowing the bad guys to win, because you're undermining your nation's defense. You're undermining pride and patriotism.
exactly. That's exactly my point. And I just wanted to premise that I do understand. I'm not trying to be critical of those that have post-traumatic stress disorder. Again, it's something personal. I've got other people that are close to me that now suffer from that. Um, but yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly why I'm showing these movies. That is the underlying message that, you know what, these American military, only the Americans, by the way, not the Muslims, but just the American military is evil and so on and so forth. And if you partake in combat, if you know, then you're going to suffer, your family's going to suffer, and so on. Thank you. Yeah.
Interesting. They cry wolf and then they turn around and eat the sheep from Ralph Mad Monkey Design. For the audience, all of Nico's links, there's an entire bio in the description box. It's quite lengthy and detailed. So all of his links, all of his socials are there. And yeah, so are mine. And guys, if you do like this, please do like it, do share it, do subscribe. Follow me on X as well. I post a lot of small articles and little bite-sized nuggets there as well, which you may find useful. And I do a little bit of debunking of various things there, so you might find that easy to digest. You know, a short tweet is easier than a 2 hour video on YouTube. And yeah, if you do like what I do, please do support the channel. That is always very much appreciated. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah. And if anyone gets the idea to come to my channel, just be warned that on that channel I get very obnoxious. So my apologies in advance for that. All right, we can go to the next slide.
The Hurt Locker or the next one?
The Hurt Locker. Basically, yeah, it's the same thing. Post-traumatic stress disorder. This one was an award winner, but yeah, that's exactly what you said. They're using yet another way to undermine the U.S. military or patriotism, or is basically saying, well, if you partake in this, then you're going to suffer emotionally, and it's not worth it. What is the message that we get over and over and over again? Again, born on the 4th of July, also.
Yeah, be peaceful, do nothing, let the bad guys win. That's kind of the message I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly. 13 hours, another good one. that I liked. Yeah, I think I would say most people are familiar with this and the story behind it. This is one that really bugs the heck out of me, especially Hillary Clinton's response to it when the movie came out. Um, and it's quite callous, the whole collateral damage. I don't call for anyone's death. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Muslims. I know this, I shouldn't be saying that as a Christian, but after all my experiences these recent years and all that I've learned about Islam this past couple of years, it's difficult to have an open heart, and I'm working on that. I'm being public about that. But that being said, I certainly don't want them to be genocide. I feel bad when I hear stories about the leveling of cities in Palestine and so on. Um, but yeah, I mean, at some point you got to do what you got to do. I'm not, I'm not, condemning it either, uh, completely. Okay, that's just. I mean, 13 hours. I think.
Just a
Sorry, go
point
ahead.
of interest, someone posted on my channel a few days ago a comment, and they stated that, guys, remember, Christians are just supposed to bend over and let the
Right.
barbarians win. Now, I'm paraphrasing what was said there, but apparently Christians are supposed to roll over and play dead when the bad guys come with the borders and steal your houses, burn your property, and rape your wives. So apparently that Christians, because Jesus didn't do anything military, so therefore we are supposed to do exactly that and just die, like little cowards. And I mean, being Jesus is kind of for Jesus. There's that. Um, would be my perspective. But also, for some reason, Paul speaks of the relationship between Christians and governing authorities. And he states that all authority comes from God. Rulers, good rulers, are considered God's servants and they must promote good and justice. So I don't think Jesus was a coward. Jesus was willing to die. That's great, but that's his example, not mine. Right? So Romans 13:4 says that governing authority does not bear the sword in vain. So I think this is a very biased, very one-sided view of and it lets evil win. Remember, we also, and that same guy probably like tweets out every day, you know all that evil needs to win is that good men do nothing. And yet here he's going, Jesus did nothing in the face of evil. Jesus let people slap him around, so we also need to be slapped around and do nothing. Therefore, doing nothing, being a coward, and letting evil win is the Christian way, which is hypocrisy, and I absolutely reject that. So now, why would authority bear a sword and not bear it in vain? It's an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Humans are doing that. Christians are in government. So yes, given that governing authority is God given, this whole idea of this passive cowardice is false. Your thoughts on that? Because I
Yeah.
think these messages are trying to push this false view of we're supposed to just roll over and play dead and hope they give it to us with Vaseline so at least we don't complain so much.
I mean, yeah, even well, again, I think it's just designed. When you look at it as a whole, it's at least systematic, if not systemic. It's at least systematically undermining the U.S. military specifically. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And another verse that some bring up is when Christ tells Peter to carry your sword, you'll need it where you're going. For the
Yep.
Catholics and Orthodox, where they have saints again, the Orthodox are celebrating right now Saint Demetrius,
Yeah.
and yeah, so we're not we're not foreign to the idea that you have to, for example, and one of them, this is actually one of the movies actually uses this line: "Lay down your life for the other." It's the greatest form of love, and these kinds of things. I completely agree with that. Again, but it's just heartbreaking to have to take a life, but what are you going to do when that life is exponentially taking out many others? At that point, you got to do what you got
I
to
mean,
do.
there's a distinction, like they say, no, the Ten Commandments says thou shalt not kill. No, it doesn't say that. It says thou
Right.
shalt not
Murder.
murder.
Right.
There's a
Thank you.
vast difference.
Yes.
So yeah, I think there's people who are reading the Bible and going, well, I am the main authority of the Bible, at least according to my brain, because the Holy Spirit's in my brain and it wouldn't lie to me. I don't need a church. I commune directly with Jesus. Don't need anyone to tell me nothing, and off they go. And I think that's completely wrong. We need to defend ourselves. We need to defend the West. We cannot let our enemies define Christianity for us.
Yeah, man. All right. Unless you
Yeah.
got anything on 13 hours, we can go on to the next one. Yeah, cool. Yeah. This one again. This one I just felt compelled to include. Again, I'm a disclosure guy. This one could probably go either way, but it's a funny movie. As you can see, there's a lot of things going on here, gender issues and all that too, of course. But
I decided not to watch this. I was thinking about it, and I decided to give it a miss.
yeah, I mean, SNL cast member, lead role, it's probably not. It's probably a red flag in itself. But yeah, I mean, long story short, yeah, it is portraying the military, U.S. military, especially the men, as incompetent. So, so, Eye in the Sky. I thought
This
this
was
was good.
brilliant.
Yeah,
This was excellent. Yeah.
great. Yeah, great production value. Again,
Also,
you know,
really, really interesting moral choices and discussions. I mean, I must admit, this really highlighted the issues, gave it some real punch. The story was interesting.
what do you mean? Like, if you mind expanding that?
No, it didn't shy away from the hard moral questions, from
Mm,
the political agendas, the psychological impact that was causing on the operators, the government people who are just trying to do their jobs. I mean, there's one very interesting movie where the question is, where they ask this MI5, where they tell the MI5 agent, you can do good or you can do well, and you have to choose.
mm. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Like, I really like this movie too, for exactly for those reasons. But I just brought it up mostly because of what's going on with all the drones things, all the drone strikes. I know Israel is having problems not only with missiles but with drones getting through, especially lately. Now that Hezbollah, not to get off on a
Yeah.
tangent, but now that Hezbollah is involved. Um, so it's interesting that this movie came out 2015 when drones were kind of a new thing to us, at least the public, and now it's like a major contributor. And now Elon Musk and his robot
Yeah. I
servants.
worked for the company that the cameras they have on those drones and the laser designators. I worked for the company that manufacture those.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. But I'm sure you got some stories to tell.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had an interesting life before I moved to Poland and became poor. Yeah.
I hear you. Can relate to that. Um, yeah. By the way, I was. Anyways, that's enough about me. Let's go on to the next slide. The men who stare at goats.
Very funny.
Yeah.
I watched it like 4 times. This is
See.
incredibly funny.
Yeah. So people hate me for ripping into the movies they love. People who've watched any of my live streams end up complaining like, "Hey, you know what? You've ruined my pastime." So, and this is the kind of the curse of a film student too, by the way.
Sorry.
No worries. You can't, as a film student, for those of you who might not know, once you start studying film, you can no longer watch a film now without analyzing how it's being made. And so it's kind of cool to know these things, but then it's also a curse because you can't put the cat back in the bag, you know. So yeah, I mean, with the men who stare at goats, again, I'm including it because I don't think this is necessarily even though it's based on a true story. Even the title itself, "The Men Who Stare at Goats," isn't that condescending? So
No, it's not a. It's actually that you mentioned it. I mean, it's like, okay, you think of Afghanistan where the men stare at goats and the goats are scared. There's that, but but
okay.
this is really about men who. I mean, this is derived from a legitimate CIA experiment where they were trying to teach men to be assassins with their minds and to kill animals and use their brains to will a goat's heart to stop to kill it, so they could weaponize these men to be assassins.
Mm. But it's still, yeah, I mean, it's still a spoof, right? It's still a spoof on those events. I don't know if a spoof can be considered um, making it look heroic or positive or building it up, but instead of kind of mocking it. That's the
Yeah,
sense
but
I
it pushes that the U.S. government does freaky things, completely whack job, and is
All
into
right.
too much drugs. I mean, it does push
Okay.
that message. It
Yeah.
normalizes that.
I'm I'm not disagreeing with it, but in the sake of the context of this presentation, the theme is consistent here. You know what I mean? Like it's always anti-U.S. How bad U.S. is. I'm not. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not disagreeing completely. I mean, I'm not. But why is it only the U.S.? That's the other question I'd like to ask. Why is it always only the U.S. and not, um, you know, well, I don't want to say this country on your
I
channel. I
won't
think
pick
I don't
on
know.
smaller countries because that would be racist.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the word colonial. Why is it only that the European nations were colonial and everyone else was not when they did the same things? Why don't we use the same label for everyone? Excuse me. Uh,
Because you can only blame you can only blame the white people and you cannot blame the non-white people. I mean, let me just bring this or just drop this across here. I mean, this was the Islamic Empire. So these guys were settled here. This little dot is Mecca. That's where they were. Next thing you know, they've destroyed 10,000 Christian churches all across North Africa. They've destroyed 1,000 churches on the Turkish border with Armenia, and they are enslaving. That they control half of Italy. They controlled the coastline of Italy up to 100 kilometers from the coast. They, for 700 years, they conquered Spain, and they were attacking the French in the late 600s, 690s, 700s. They were kicked out of Spain, out of France in 732. They got kicked out of Spain in the 1100s. What were the Muslims doing in Spain attacking the French in the late 600s, early 700s? What did the French do to them? No, because these are warlike Muslims. And no one talks about how these are all colonial countries still under Islamic domination,
right. Thank you.
still under the religious theocracy of ultimately Saudi Arabia, still today.
Yeah. And yeah, my Arab friends, my Arab Christian friends, really get upset with me when I frame it this way. But I also want to point out how these European nations are predominantly Christian historically, and I feel that that has a lot to do with it. I could be wrong, but that's my perception. Again, from my lens, it's you're either with Christ or you're not. I don't have a middle ground. Um, yeah, yeah, that's all I got on that. We
Yeah,
can.
so
Sorry.
conociendo el Islam. Yeah, we're not really talking about aliens and UFO movies. I mean, that's a little too yeah, it's off the topic.
Mm,
I'm not going to go there, honestly. I mean, there's probably a couple I like, but I mean, I mean, there's enough speculative nonsense on the internet, so not my thing.
yeah, yeah. So War Machine again. Why is it the U.S. military only? That's the War Machine and not any other nations. you know. Um, yeah, like Islam, isn't that a war machine? Like you just demonstrated. Yeah. So just
Yeah.
that's it. That's all I got for this group of films. Now we're getting into, if we have time, the pure pro Islamic pro culture films.
You know
Yeah.
what would also be interesting is is it not Heartbreak Ridge? There's the one with Clint Eastwood's son. That's about this outpost in Afghanistan. Scott Eastwood. Let me see.
Mm,
Let me just see. Yeah. Let me just find it. Give me a second. The
thanks.
Outpost. That's it.
Okay, that's one that's on my radar. It's on my list, but way down on my list. Yeah,
It's
that's
actually I've enjoyed it a few. I've watched it a few times. I quite enjoyed it.
yeah.
I think it's The Outpost with Scott Eastwood. And this was actually a really interesting film, and I think it portrays them really well. It humanizes them. So I like this one.
Okay.
That actually was a positive message. I really enjoyed it. I've
Thank.
watched it like twice, I think, and it's got Clint Eastwood's son in it, so it was really good.
So I might have to watch that on a Sunday
Oh,
or
have
something.
you seen also? Hold on, last one. Have you seen this one?
Yes. Yes, that's a good one. Good choice.
Yeah, I've
Good choice.
watched this like four times, and I think it's pretty good. And I think it makes a fair distinction between those who are helpful and those who are not.
Mhm.
I think this one is fair. I really liked it.
I like the scene in the middle. I mean, it shows basically how money's being used in exchange and all that. Yeah, it shows all kinds of things. It's a really good movie. There's also, anyways, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but yeah, that's another good choice.
Right. Okay, so Oh, you're
Should we?
right, Kevin. Yes, this Robin. Yeah, he's like this. He's like this sophisticated, wise Muslim guy, and you're like, huh?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly that. And this is a childhood favorite of mine. This is probably my favorite Robin Hood movie, even though it's the least popular one. And Morgan Freeman's character here is one of the reasons. Um, yeah, he's always playing the wise guy and all that. So he's being casted that way. Um, Same with the late James Earl Jones, with the voice. He's always the wise guy. Um, but yeah, so basically, yeah, the British are portrayed as these evil people. He comes back home, and he's got the evil sheriff and all that. Well, this guy, the Moor is running around. He's like, he's the mentor. He's the protector. His people, his women are the most
The
beautiful.
scientist who knows how to use the telescope, and then Robin Hood is too stupid to know. And he looks at it from the wrong side, and everything becomes microscopic because he's a bumbling idiot.
Yep, good call.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Uh,
And then also there's another thing that happens here as well with Morgan Freeman. Sorry, this is one other item as well. Um, it the demonization of British history, right, has continued.
mm,
Now you have they're demonizing and telling a completely false history of Winston Churchill, and this has become a relentless series of attacks. And so it's snowballed. Then the whole thing, once you open the door, it has snowballed as well.
yeah, and so even in this movie, they're showing the Crusades as almost as if the British lost and they had to retreat. And they show nothing about the war. And yeah, it's just so one-sided and misguiding, but very subtly. If you're not paying attention, or if you don't know, you completely buy into it, like I did when I was young. All right, we can go to the next one. Yeah, so this is a classic tale. A lot of the really popular movies through the decades, from the very beginning of Hollywood on, come from 1001 Arabian Nights. Um, and so even movies of that name were done. Basically, it's a story of a wife who's trying to not get not get killed by this Muslim sheikh or whatever he is. He's got many wives. He keeps basically he wants nothing but virgins, and so he marries a woman, and then he kills her the next day, and then he marries another one, he kills her. And so she comes along, she's like, okay, well, to avoid this, she starts telling him a story so he won't do the bridal duties with her. And so every night she's got a new story for him to kind of keep him away. And he's all engrossed in these stories, and that's where you get the 1001 Arabian Nights. So all
Actually, a
these other,
pretty nasty premise.
yeah. But yeah, of course, Hollywood made movies about it, and naturally they didn't portray it in that way. So, and even cartoons, by the way, you see that's oh boy, the Mr. Magoo, which goes way back. Not only is it animation, but um, early animation, early 20th century. All right, so we can go on to the next one. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. But I just want to make sure because
No, I think it's okay.
all right. Okay, so Alibaba. Surely you've heard of Alibaba, one of my childhood favorites. As you can see here, this is we have animations, we have grassroots movement going on. We have a conditioning of youth that is pushing Islamic mythologies or culture onto children. Um, and these are some of my favorite films. You even got Popeye doing it. One of my favorite bands, who by the way is Jewish. I got to put that out there. You might have heard of them, Beastie Boys. Anyone?
Ah,
Okay, so in the
yeah,
song,
the Beastie Boys. I got a little story I got to
yeah,
tell about three bank robbers you know so well.
yeah, yeah.
Started way
Uh,
back in
you,
history.
you're gonna get zapped. um,
Don't sleep till Brook. No, no sleep till Brooklyn.
yeah.
Yeah, I grew up on that.
Do you remember Rhythm and Stealin'?
uh, I, I listened to all of it. I just probably can't remember that one. There's a few
Uh,
that I like the lyrics.
there's one part of it that goes Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Ali.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes,
So
yes.
even
I remember that.
yeah. So even in this out of whatever you want to label that music, even there they're pushing the Alibaba narrative. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
Um,
but I don't. I mean, would you really say that that would necessarily be part of a conspiracy, or they're being pushed into it, or it's just that they just ran with the theme because there's going to be some level of coincidence. You can't have 100%. You've got some strange Jewish guy in a basement who's manipulating literally everybody. That would be stretching
well,
imagination a bit.
yeah. I don't. I try not to. I try to avoid the why. I mean, unless I only talk about that if I can't take it anymore and I want to share my quote unquote opinion. But outside of that, I try to stick to the when, the what, and the who. You know.
Yeah, I mean, K drama says I don't hate the US, but I hate US foreign policies. They love Islam and promoting Islam. Look, I will mention I used to work in the Middle East, and if you didn't have the US parking their ships all over the Middle East, you'd have had Iran invading everybody. You'd have had Saudi Arabia invading their neighbors and stealing their stuffs. Seriously, the US, as much as you only hear about the bad. If the US weren't around playing world police, you would have a lot of bad things going on in the world that you wouldn't want to happen. I sat down once with the guy who was in charge of the arms procurement for the UAE military, and he sat down and he said in their war games they estimated that if Iran ever decided to invade the UAE, that's Dubai and Abu Dhabi, if they ever decided to invade, that they would send the jet fighters over, they would bomb the runway so that the jets couldn't take off, and then they would send their ships across. And I was involved with the system for detecting any boats moving out of the Iranian harbors. I built a system, I designed and helped to build a system for various militaries in that region to monitor all Iranian traffic, especially military traffic on the water. And the estimate was, they said their best wargaming is that if the Iranians ever decided to take over that part of the Gulf, they would do it in under 60 minutes. They said best case, if they would manage to get their planes off the ground, they managed to, because the missiles would be across, destroy the runways, and if they, best case, he said 2 hours, and the Iranians would overwhelm that region. So if the US weren't there with their little bases and with their navies, you would see a lot more instability and a lot more wars. So as much as there's a lot of bad things, and we only hear the bad, there's a lot of good things as well.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. So you can see even Bugs Bunny did an episode on Alibaba. This is mid to early 20th century. I don't remember too many uh, movies from my time, from let's say the 90s on.
Hmm.
So yeah. So but basically, Alibaba is from A Thousand One Nights. Very popular. Again, about thieving, about stealing. So um, that's probably why the Beastie Boys included it as in their song. Um, yeah. So that's pretty much all I got for
I mean, I
Alibaba.
think they just were having fun. I mean, I don't see them as any kind of hidden message trying to promote the CIA's, MK Ultra, or Mockingbird message. I don't get that. Uh,
Yeah, I
uh,
don't know about Mockingbird and all that, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I just stick with the who, the what, and the when, not the why.
yeah, but it's interesting how they are. You see American movies. Police are evil. Police are corrupt. Police are bad. Police are
Right.
racist.
F the
Then you see all
F,
of these movies, and it's like it's all romanticized, and really it's so amazing, and it's all
exactly,
incredibly exotic.
exactly, and that's why I started. I started with the weak arguments of the first grouping, and then the second grouping of just the U.S. military, and only the U.S. military is just bad for so many different reasons. And now we're getting into outright promotion of Islam, which is undeniable. And then, again, if you're up for it, if ever where I'm a welcome, yeah, I'm not a big fan of reviews, but I would love to sit down and watch that documentary that you gave me, the real bad Muslims, and just
Real.
rip it a new one. If this presentation itself hasn't done that already, or we'll do that. So yeah, Thief of Baghdad. Again, this is kind of
To show the audience again, it's real bad Arabs. This
yeah.
one.
Yeah, I skimmed through it and I was like, man, I can't watch this. You know? But I'll suffer through it if for a good cause.
He
Um,
says that the genie is black in the movie posters, and now the genie is blue. You're right. With it, yeah.
oh yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same one. I see what you're saying. Um, yeah. So again, this kind of the same thing as you can see, stealing, which is common. You know, you guys might know that it's okay for Muslims to steal from the kafir, but good luck the other way around, or so on. So you can see stealing as a major theme in all these things we're going to go through, amongst other things. So yeah, the Thief of Baghdad wasn't. I didn't find too many examples of that. Maybe the Thief of Damascus is influenced by that. Maybe not. Again, this is a stretch. This is let's say just food for thought. I'm not even going to say it's my opinion. I'm just putting it out there because it had a similar name around the same time. The same thing with the Wizard of Baghdad. It's got a similar story to the Thief of Baghdad, an Abu kind of character, but I can't really confirm whether or not it's been influenced by that. But
Right.
at any rate, you can see different films that are somewhat similar that are promoting Islam or its cultures and its beliefs and so on. Aladdin, certainly everyone's heard of Aladdin here. If we can see how far back Aladdin goes, this is a silent film from I think 1917.
Why did you call it Aladdin? It's Al-Adin,
Aladdin, oh forgive me.
of
All
the
right,
faith, of the creed, of the religion. Actually,
yeah,
it's none of those. It's of the deen is a political system. So he is of the deen being Islam, Islam being the political system like communism or fascism or Nazism. This is the theocratic political system of the
fascinating.
deen.
And look at how much of the Dean they're pushing here. I mean, all throughout. And again, grassroots movement, as we saw with the other ones. These are movies that were also shown on television. And up until, let's say, the 70s, we only had three channels. Everyone was watching the same thing at the same time throughout the country. Everyone, for at least 2 to 3 full generations. And then cable TV came around, and a decade later, satellite dish, and then this internet stuff came around at the turn of the century. Um, anyway, so yeah, yeah. Again, this is about Jinn, right? It made Jinn popular, just like I Dream of Jeannie, the '60s TV series.
Yeah, it's all colorful and friendly, this family friendly.
Mhm. Yeah, and just you even see in the film at the bottom this they go out of their way. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of time, a lot of resources spent planning, editing, and so on. That there's no accident that this character is made to look like a Christ figure, which is they go out of their way to be blasphemous. I mean, you can just see their religion for that to be true. But yeah, again, from early on, even on Broadway, they had a musical, Aladdin, and this is not even going into radio, print, and so on. So it's just all over the place. Even this is like a 1950s DuPont show. It's like the Ed Sullivan show. Even there, they're featuring Aladdin. So I mean,
Al-Adin.
forgive me. Okay, I'll get it right maybe one of these days.
Yeah, no, but think about it. It's hidden in plain sight. It's hidden right there. It's
Yes,
Al-Adin. So it's not Aladdin. It's Al-Adin. We forget what it really means. It's of the faith, of the creed, of the deen.
hidden in plain sight. You're tempting me to go off on that conspiracy theory tangent again, but this is the difference between stuff from the 20th century and stuff now in the 21st century. Back then, it was much more subtle. They introduced things incrementally. It was much more
Hmm.
subliminal. Now it's just belligerent. It's overt. It's
But in
I
a
don't.
sense, that's actually a good thing. I mean, look, they've achieved success. Remember what I said earlier? One of the lessons that I learned, um, long story, won't go there, but when you try to force someone to adopt an idea,
Mhm.
when you push facts, reason, and data, when you try to manipulate them and force them with facts, reason, and data in a manipulative manner, of course, they reject it because it's not their thought. It's an external thought that's being forced upon them, and people resist it. But what you get them to imagine as their own thought, because you're not saying, hey, this is good. You show them a cool movie, beautiful colors, lovely pictures, pretty actresses, boob tubes and whatnot. And it looks fun. It looks interesting. It looks friendly. It looks wholesome. You accept it and you tell yourself, this is fun. This is good. This is nice. I like this. They didn't tell you to like it. You liked it yourself. So therefore, it's your thought, and your mind does not resist it. It lets it in. Now they're blatant, though. So.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's pretty much exactly, if you think about it, getting on a theological discussion here, it's just like when Satan himself tried to tempt Jesus Christ, promising him the world. It's kind of like that. They're alluring us with all this magical, majestic stuff and promise of good things and happy things and self-gain to lure us in. And unfortunately, I've been a victim of it myself. I call myself a victim of mass media, one of its biggest victims, because I too have bought into it up until very recently. Even to this day, I struggle with it, to be honest.
You see this on the left. I'm a victim. Send me money.
Amen. Yeah. Speaking of sending money, I've got a fundraiser coming up. But anyway, all right. Next slide. All right. I mean, unless you've got, yeah, that's it. All right. So Sinbad. I find this is not academic, but it's kind of intriguing to me that in English, if you break that word up, it's a very interesting name. I'm sure it's completely coincidence, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting coincidence. But you can see here.
Sinbad.
Sorry, yeah.
It's actually Sindibad. I believe it should be Sindibad. But you're right. Why did they make it Sinbad? I believe it's Sindibad. Sindbad. Yeah, good grief. Yeah, go on, Inner. Sorry, I'm interrupting. Go on.
Yeah, no. That's basically, I mean, you can see here now like a plethora of productions for Sinbad. Again, yet another thief. All this occult stuff going on. It was even present in comics. That's a 12-cent comic. I believe that's 1940s, 50s probably. 50s, yeah. Yeah, so Popeye again, cartoons, TV series dedicated to that. Both are early 20th century, mid 20th century, late 20th century, 21st century Sinbad, all across the board. Movies, even Lou Ferrigno, interesting actor, interesting person, played Sinbad. I mean, it's just all over the place. Again, the question remains are they portraying it in a positive light, a negative light, or a neutral light? Is it all about the money? I've demonstrated here that on every level, whether it's attacking U.S. military, undermining it through propaganda, or whether it's promoting Islamic occult constructs, it's positive for Islam. And again, it's from the very beginning of Hollywood and so on. We're not even focusing on TV or radio or print or the internet. 21st century abomination.
That's not the root of Sinbad. While you're speaking, it's really interesting. The seventh voyage of Sinbad, the seven adventures of Sinbad. So I don't know if there's, I mean, who knows? There might be some kind of symbolism there.
Yeah, I think again, just a shot in the dark. But when I say that, I think I'm trying to pervert that seven.
But on another view, from another viewpoint, though, here you've got Westerners who are making polite, pleasant, likable representations of foreign cultures, and yet these foreign cultures turn around and do exactly the opposite. They demonize, they attack, and they undermine,
Yes.
and they call everyone racist. So I mean, you could also look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
Still being nice, and they abused your generosity. They abused your politeness.
yeah, I mean, I I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but just to get touch on that BRICS thing. I've worked for a certain country I can't mention on YouTube, or so I've been told. At least I will on my channel, but I don't want to compromise you. Um, but yeah, they basically their children act the same way that we see on Far 4 cartoon. Children that seem to adore me and so on and so forth. Little 8-year-olds that are really intelligent, really nice, really sweet. That on their national holidays they'll start going kill, 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 kill everyone. I'm like, what about the Europeans? Kill everyone. What about me? Kill everyone. Just like you see on Far 4, right? So yeah, not everyone is, well, in a nutshell. Again, I've got that black white, either with Christ or not perspective. Not everyone is Christian. It's the
Yeah.
reality.
And I see you've got here Lawrence of Arabia,
Yeah.
right? The next one. And what I find interesting is Lawrence of Arabia, apparently in his memoirs, or at least so the story goes, he was actually, let's just say, a nice Muslim man grabbed him, threw him over a table, held him
Oh
down,
wow.
and had his way with him. And they kind of erased that little they erased that little story because it wouldn't fit the narrative. And then on top of that, Lawrence of Arabia was apparently a little bit too much. He'd gone, he'd gone dances with camels, basically. So he was a bit of a whack job in some of his ideology.
It wouldn't surprise me. And again, this is a story that's also, I mean, a movie that's also controversial. The Muslims are claiming that it's anti-Islam. Where if you look at the story, the movie at least, yeah, I know, right? Look at the movie, it's yeah, I wouldn't say it's anti-Islam. It portrays Islam as this powerful entity where, um, you know, the British are kind of dancing around them, are kind of scared to approach them or deal with them. Um, and again, you see these other the lion in the desert, the wind and the lion, and the the kite runner was when it's in the 21st century. They had a lot of buzz. I think it was like around 2008 when that one came out, give or take. Um, and that was again the award winner. Like look at the Muslim boy who's befriending the non-Muslim. How nice, right? But we all know that's not a reality. In fact, that's against. I mean, is it? Are you familiar? I don't want to put you on the spot, but offhand, do you know what Reliance of the Travel, what Sharia law says about non-Muslims befriending Muslims? I mean, we know what
It's not
Hadith.
allowed. I mean, they can be nice to you as long as they hate you in their hearts and they can pretend to be your friend. But I mean, also here, look at this Momo here, the beam of light, the ray of light
Right.
shining on him. I mean, this is something I've discussed often on my channel, like many times. So, except, I mean, she had the light coming from her vajayjay, shining 1,200 kilometers from indoors, though. I don't know how that works, but okay, it does. And then, of course, that is taken from the proto-evangelion of James, which speaks of Jesus being born in a ray of light. So, yeah.
And yeah, that's a bit is exactly right. And they're just yeah. Anyway, it's just blasphemous and these. Prince of Persia, actually great production value. When I watched it, I enjoyed it. But obviously pro-Islam. All this stuff is obviously pro-Islam and misleading, if not blasphemous. We see in this last example, blasphemous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
although it kind of treads very lightly. Like if you look at what's the movie that was mentioned earlier, which I mean I've watched this movie like 6 times, Kingdom of Heaven,
Oh yeah.
and it portrays the Templars as corrupt, and it portrays the Muslims as pious and respectable, and with integrity, fighting for a valid cause, that it's like that really twists the history and the morality there.
Mm. Yeah. There's another one. Anyway. Yeah. There's a lot of movies that I haven't. I mean, again, this is just a sample. There's a lot of movies that I haven't included. But I was thinking if we do that other the review of the documentary you mentioned, and then again, that if all things go well, maybe we can also follow it up with a third and include items that we didn't include, and kind of go into production things that are behind the scenes,
Right.
the why.
Yeah, yeah. I might have to,
No
yeah,
worries.
because like December's going to be very awkward for me because I've got a lot going on. Because especially the move is coming up, and we've got to finish the place, and and I also want to start doing some of my own streams. Go back to material that I
Mm,
need to do of my by myself, some of my own stuff, and but yeah, look, I mean, I'll try and schedule around that as well
no
because
worries.
yeah, definitely make time.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So yeah, the next one, America.
so Tyson became a Muslim.
Yeah, at least publicly.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's a ploy. I don't, like this whole Andrew Tate kind of thing, or what's the other one? Cheeto. What's his name? The one everyone talks about, the young guy, the gamer.
I mean, Johnny Bravo,
Cheapo.
just to answer you, says, I'm steering the listeners. I mean, look, I'm pretty blatant. I've been very upfront at all times with my perspectives and my views, right? And I think adults can make up their own mind and they can walk away if they don't like what my view is. I mean, that is their choice. So, did I make you rate the FBI with a 2? I think it's blatantly obvious they're corrupt, they're biased, they are partisan, they're just a tool of the Democrat Party that I don't think we need to guess that they are corrupt. I mean, the incompetence they've showed. Do you know anything about the first assassin that tried to take out Donald Trump? Have you heard anything? When who was the guy that tried to take out Ronald Reagan? This was pre-internet. Within 48 hours, they had the last intimate details of this guy's life splashed all over the web. I mean, all over the newspapers, all over TV. We still know nothing about the guy that tried to take out Trump, who he was connected to, how he got in the roof, how no one saw him. I mean, the chain of failure, of
Mm,
complete and utter incompetence, it defies imagination. It gets to the point where this was deliberate, where they allowed it to happen, where if they didn't make it happen, they certainly looked the other way while they knew it was happening. So yeah, we all know the FBI, that's the Secret Service. Sorry, we should distinguish the Secret Service, but the FBI. What have they done? What have they come up with? Where's the facts? What's the information? We know nothing. What about the other guy who was tied? They're both tied in with BlackRock. Apparently, they both have certain connections to. I mean, the guy was shooting at the range that had all these FBI in attendance and Secret Service personnel. Secret Service are said to be the world's best snipers, bar none. Better than better than Delta, better than SEAL teams. They are the best snipers on the planet by all accounts, right? So yeah, who trained him? How did he get these? There's all these questions. There's too many questions. I don't think I influenced anyone. I just said, look, this is my view. I think they're corrupt, and I think we know the U.S. government. There's corruption in the U.S. government. This doesn't mean government is bad. It means that government needs a bit of a cleanup, right? So, you know, so yeah, I'll leave it at that.
yeah. Yeah. So someone in chat said Sneeko. Yeah, that's the guy. So again, Tyson, I don't know if he's a genuinely Muslim or what's going on. I mean, he seems to be all over the place. One day he's Muslim, the other next day he's, I don't know, Buddhist. The next day he's praying to broccoli. Who knows?
His head up his ass, man. What do you know about Islam?
um, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, very popular figure, ended up somewhat like speaking of broccoli, like a vegetable in the end of after all the fights for one up.
Are they Muslims or are they Nation of Islam? Because
Nation of
when
Islam.
I was the bodyguard, and yes, I was the bodyguard to Blade at one time. When I was doing close protection work for Wesley Snipes, I can tell it now. It's like many years later. He was a Muslim. Ostensibly, he was a Buddhist as well. So I don't know. You figure that out. But he was adherent of the Nation of Islam, which when you look, if there's these two short videos on my channel, have a look at them. That's two short 3 to 5 minute videos on my channel about the Nation of Islam. Those ideas are insane. So of course they don't talk about this, but I can tell you that having spoken with people in the Nation of Islam, they hate white people, and if you're not white, well, if you're white, they hate you. Let's be honest. They're told not to fraternize with you. They're told not to share anything with you. They're told not to become friends with you. And the ideology is inherently anti-white. And besides that, they think you're evil. They think you're satanic. You're the devil. When they say the white devils, they mean it. They mean white demons, evil demons. That's part of the ideology, and they are racist. And they have a council of elders. I know who some of these elders are. I haven't met them, but I know people who are adherents, and they have a council of elders that control or try to at least, the black society and black community, and it's they are not healthy people. Sorry,
Yeah.
back over to you. Any comments or thoughts that you want to throw in there to what I've said?
Yeah, no, there's a little clip of one of these things that I've found on YouTube of a woman with a Nation of Islam. She was driving by, I think it was during a BLM riot. Some people were protecting, I think it was like, I don't know, pawn store or something. They were all black. She was black too. She's driving by. She's like shouting at them all kinds of weird, absurd, hilarious, insane things, all racist. Um, yeah. Anyways, I'll have to find that and share it if I can. But yeah, I agree with you. It's just, I don't know, asinine. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
trying not to use too many
agreed.
adjectives, but yeah. Yeah, and again, let's see who else we got. Malcolm X. This, in my mind, this was a dichotomy between MLK Jr. and Malcolm X. I always favored MLK Jr., of course, as a Christian, but just recently I've found out some things about him.
Once you study MLK Jr., you're gonna like him about as much as I like Martin Luther.
It's funny you said that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, if I brought that up, what you might say.
You study the life of MLK and you go like, this guy should be put in a cannon and shot into space while being eaten by fire ants because he deserved it.
I gotta say, Lloyd, on the back of that, like, this is just literally just recent discovery of mine. I had no idea, and yeah, like I said, for years I had him. I know this sounds silly, but I had him, in my heart, like some kind of hero, like some kind of Christian hero who did the right thing in the right way, kind of like Gandhi, right? Like the example you used earlier.
Yeah.
Everyone has to be a Gandhi, just lay over for the bad guys, right? But yeah, I mean, now that I found out these things about the guy, Martin Luther King Jr., I'm talking about, um, it's like, I mean, who's left? And then the same people were talking about what they're calling the Black Church, which in my mind, again, now that I've interacted with these people, I realize that, yeah, my perspective of what they're calling the Black Church was from media. I always saw, the Black Church or its members as very devout, very spiritual, passionate people, and they're portraying them differently. Again, these people are black, by the way. They're not, so they're allowed to be honest about their own people by today's standards. Anyway, yeah, it's just when you start going down this thing. Well, this group is that way, this person is that way, and you tear away all these heroes. I almost want to go back to ignorance and believing a falsehood, because now who do I have? Who's left for me to look up to?
Yeah, when I'll do Martin Luther King at some point in the future. But the truth coming out about, and also the FBI has refused to release his records for what, 68 years or something, 48 years, whatever it is. That's a long time, and at some point soon, those records will come out. And when they release the records of Martin Luther King, I think we're going to discover just what a criminal, communist
Yeah,
criminal. I mean, sex maniac, violent, communist criminal the man was.
you're killing me, bro. We got to change the subject. Seriously, I'm like,
Yeah, I know
I'm
it might
still trying
upset
to recover
people,
from
but
that.
look, I say very blunt things, but look, I say them because I've done a lot of reading on this,
No, it's not
and a
that.
lot of
It's
the
just no. Literally, it's heartbreaking. Like I'm now going on 3 months from a break on a series that I was doing at Eddie Murphy. Again, that sounds silly because I am an adult and all these things that I know. But it's just, I mean, going. I'm realizing this stuff goes ways back. I was making excuses up until recently for Eddie Murphy. Like, okay, you know what? He was being peer pressure to take his current stance on his reboots and all that. But I mean, yeah. Long story short, I think if we're going to be adults, and I'm thinking aloud here, but since we're talking about this, if we're going to be adults, we've got to just get over these worldly idolizations and just center on Christ. And I'm not being cheesy,
fair
but
enough. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's all what we're left with, right?
yeah, no, fair enough. Um,
Yeah. So yeah, this is just basically international slew of films. Just a small sampling. Um, the Messenger is one that I want to do a review on in itself. But yeah, I mean, the Conquest 1453. This is a very short list. You can see
That's when
Matt
the Muslims invaded Vienna,
right,
the first conquest of Vienna.
Bilal, a new breed hero. I mean, yeah, the I did one on I forgot what it's called, but anyways, the grassroots movement is in also international. All these things we talk about. I mean, if it's happening that heavily in the U.S., just imagine what's happened. What kind of propaganda is out there? Um, all positive, by the way, as you can see, obviously positive. Yeah, I
Interesting.
think this is the last slide, right? Yeah,
This one I think is the last slide.
yeah. So this one's basically about censorship. It's my call to arms, to duty, so to speak. I want everyone to band together, especially content creators, but everyone who's being censored, silenced. Please, class action suit is there's people out there that are doing that. Let's not wait for everyone else to kind of make a change. Ron DeSantis allegedly and all these things. We've got to get active and push back, or we're doomed. I mean, look what's going on in the UK right now, for example, as one example of many. Um, yeah, I mean that's basically it. Again, the question stands. There's claims that Hollywood media is prejudiced towards Islam, is slandering Islam, um, but I've demonstrated here the exact opposite is the true, and I challenge anyone um, to prove me wrong.
I just saw one. I just want to say, Francisco, I appreciate the questions and the interest, but also the chat when you're doing your education on Islam which is not related to the topic, is very much a distraction. It would be nice if you would, outside of, when you're busy chatting about movies in Islam and you're busy trying to educate yourself on Islamic doctrine and ISIS and things, that's not really on the topic. So take the time outside of this to actually go watch many. I've got 600 videos on my channel, lots of series that go step by step. Try to educate yourself then, and then come to the chat with some knowledge, because I find it a real distraction. 1453 was the conquest of Constantinople.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't say you should leave, but I did say you should just understand that we're talking about topic A and you're on topic Q, and you've got time outside to do some research.
Thank you, Lydia. Yeah, so that's basically all I have for you guys. I mean, I could go on about their censorship. Shame on me. I wanted to do a video before Chat GPT um, on. I was going to title it "Is AI Replacing God?" Um, basically, and then I just gathering all this information as proof for it. I just got overwhelmed. The next thing you know, Chat GPT came out and it got popularized, and at that point, I was like, all right, what's the point? Everyone was already aware of what's going on, or at least I hope. But yeah, I mean, we need to push back. It's still a free country. It's interesting that I just recently watched a video. I think it was Hatun Tash. Yeah, she did a live. I think it was yesterday. I don't know who the gentleman was, but they were talking about how she just wanted just a second wrongful arrest uh, in the UK, and the gentleman kept pointing out that the law is still actually on your side, even in the UK. If you won the case, that means the law is still on your side, even though you've got police corruption and so bad leadership and so on. You can still push back. There's still something you can do, and I encourage everyone to do that to their best, with all their being. Um, I don't want to get into my opinions of what's going to happen and all that. That's not what your channel is about. Um, but we certainly are not called to sit on our hands and wait for God or others to do our work for us.
Yeah, I don't like the passive idea, because when people say, in the end, we know who wins, Jesus wins, God wins, and like, are we supposed to do nothing until then? Are you supposed to just let evil run rampant? I have a concern with that sometimes, that people are just too passive. and believe we've got to be cowards and not masculine, and that this is our enemies defining Christianity and making us into passive, if not necessarily participants with evil, but certainly aiding and abetting it by standing aside and letting it do its thing.
Right. There's a lot of different people that put that in a very good way. But exactly, I mean, we're not supposed to be Gandhis. The common example media actually uses is the whole Nazi thing. The people who said nothing while the Nazis did their thing. I mean, isn't that the same thing? Like all these things that are going on, if you're choosing to not say anything or do anything, you're just as guilty. And if I may go on a tangent, a little off topic, but it's related to what we're saying now. Um, this whole grooming thing, which is it is related. I mean, Islam is saturated with that. Um, Look, people, please, for the love of God, hold people accountable, everyone accountable. There needs to be arrests. And if arrests aren't being made, they need to hold those people that are not doing the rest accountable as well. Do not let this be the new norm. For the love of God. Not the children too, huh?
Yeah. Like all we can do as people who don't run the government and don't have $1 billion is to talk about these things, to publicly discuss it. We don't have to jeopardize our jobs, granted, but we need to talk about this with our own circle and maybe set up open an anonymous email account, open up a Twitter account, and talk about things, discuss things, because people need to know they're not alone. So you need to let other people know, and the more you speak about it, the more you'll encourage others to speak about it. And people need to see also people who are courageous. Courageous is as infectious as is cowardice. So, and also, what is interesting about the movies that you were showing, Nico, is that you see these foreign cultures in a good light, in many cases, but you see Western culture, American culture, in a bad light.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be nice to start seeing more movies where Western culture is in a good light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that same mindset. I find it interesting that, again, going off another tangent, but related to what you just said, I find it interesting that when it comes to, and it was something you mentioned earlier, when it comes to U.S. corporations, in the late 20th century, they were basically vilified. They're the worst entities on the planet. I mean, I've learned. I'm all but PMBOK certified. Like I've learned about best practices. I'll just leave it at that. But
Yeah.
I'm not completely disagreeing with that sentiment. But isn't it interesting that U.S. corporations and only U.S. corporations are the evil ones? Well, meanwhile, all these other things, without naming countries and what they're doing, are doing the same things, if not worse. And as you said, they're the wonderful ones. Now, all of a sudden,
Yeah. Well, I mean, practical examples: 9 out of 10, 95 out of 100 of the most polluted rivers in the world are in Asia or Africa. You don't see anyone going, "You Africans are disgustingly dirty people who throw all of your crap in the river. You people are horrible. How dare you? You're causing." You don't see that. You don't see that. But you go like, "Oh, you white people, you guys are bad because you polluted that river. Look, I found a duck that had eaten a Coke bottle top," right? And that's like 5 rivers out of the whole of North America. And then like you'll see 1,000 rivers across China, India, Africa, just glutted with garbage. And it's like, that's okay. We can't criticize brown people. And you look at the amount of pollution caused by China. Britain puts out like 1% of the pollution that China does. You don't see Greta Thunberg demonstrating in front of the Chinese embassy or the Indian embassy or the Pakistani embassy going, "You people are disgusting for what you're doing by destroying the planet." I mean, China puts out, between China and India, that's what, 90% of the pollution that's entering the atmosphere, whatever. You don't see anyone protesting that because it's okay when brown people do it. It's hypocrisy. It's complete and utter hypocrisy. You should stop being guilted. This whole white guilt thing needs to stop. Sorry, your final thoughts on that, I guess.
yeah. So my final thoughts on that. Yeah, I completely agree. Again, this whole word, I mean, it's was commonly known as doublespeak. We're looking at Eric Blair's 1984, George Orwell's 1984, or dialectics. Some people call it that. it's a huge thing when it comes to controlling people's minds, controlling culture, controlling outcomes. And again, you use the word. I don't want to get off on tangents, but as an example, and bear with me, folks. Don't throw the stones at me quickly, but just hear me out just for a second. When it comes to the label Asia, who are we referring to? Are we not referring to the same people that we used to refer to as Orientals? Or am I wrong? Am I mistaken about that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
If I heard you right.
so if it's the same people, how does changing the label change anything?
Um, it's like when you look at a guy with a beard and chest hair and you go, "That's a woman." It changes things. Look, it's purely nominalism. It believes that slapping a new label on something changes the content, utterly changes the reality. It's nominalism. It's the same philosophy that Martin Luther followed. It's the same demented philosophy that doesn't believe in categories, doesn't believe in objective truth. It's purely that we simply use labels as conveniences and there are no objective categories. There's no such thing as man, woman, dog, cat, red, white. There's purely just what opinions we have about what things are. So it's the philosophy that is ruling the world today, and it's the philosophy of the woke. Woke is nominalism. It's I've got plenty of videos on my channel on that. Go look it up. It's on atheism, nominalism, and philosophy. Have a look. So that's all it is. Changing the label doesn't change anything. It's
Well,
Gnosticism.
let me add to that. Actually, I think in this case, it's both. It is that, but it's also something else. I think subliminally, what happens, and again, please bear with me here. Just some food. And again, I'm not saying this is definitively the fact. It's just an idea that maybe this is possibly true. Possibly, a label like that is being used where now the only people that exist are the people that are called the Pearl of Asia. Why? Yeah, completely excluding Indians or even Arabs or Russians or the Silk Road folk. Um, you know, it's only the Asians that exist. You see what I'm saying? Like by one label, we've now subconsciously virtually
Yeah, but
fenced.
yeah, the Nation of Islam believes that the only nation, that black people are actually Asians.
Okay.
They're part of the Asiatic race. That's what they call it. So maybe there's an overlap there. I don't know. I can't. Just that when you mentioned the whole term, because that's the original people, the black people. Okay, so 2 million years ago, 2 million years ago. I don't know what it is. 20 million years ago. I'll get the story wrong. The two videos are on my channel. They in total they're like 6 minutes to watch both or whatever, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. But the black people were the original race, and there were 24 gods called Allah. And each of these Allahs took a turn, like a 1 year period, where they would act as Allah and then they would hand over to the next guy. And they would do it they would just hand over who does the Allah duties for whatever period. And the black people were the original race. They were pure, they were intelligent, long lived. And then Yaqub, a guy known as the big head scientist because he had a massive head, he decided to rebel. He was one of the Allahs, and he rebelled and he went away to Crete, I believe, to the island of Crete. I'm looking at you, Greek people. And
Very
then what happened is he invented white people. So for 200 years, he did genetics and eugenics. And eventually, after experimenting with sperm and all sorts of weirdness, he created white people, the white race. And then the white race was given control of the earth for 6,000 years. And this is not even talking about the spaceship, okay? We're not even going to go there. But
Oh no.
anywho, so the white people has control of the earth for 6,000 years. But the white rule ended in 1914, but they were given a grace period of another 80 years or something, or 90 years, I don't know what it was. And that period has now ended in 1986, whatever, I don't know what it is. I can't remember. It's something like that. Check the video for the facts, for the details. And so white people have actually now supposed to hand the earth back to the pure, intelligent, original black people, the Asiatic race, because Asians and Indians are the same thing. So yeah, anyway, that's just some of the story that is believed by the by guys like Malcolm X, because he bought into this crap.
Mm.
So yeah, anyway, but so I'd like to. It's just a bit over 2 hours.
Yep.
I'd like to sort of wrap it up around now. So, but that's
Could
the
I,
story.
yeah. Could I, Shell, didn't, yeah, I'm a little unprepared. I,
Please go ahead, yeah.
thank you. Again, if you decide to visit my channel or, that, do that stuff, I'm going to warn you, I'm obnoxious on it. I do that by design. I've been encouraged to reconsider that. Maybe I should, I don't know, but at any rate, I'm trying to target a certain audience by using a certain language. So I'm going to,
Catch more flies with honey than you do
yeah,
with vinegar.
for real.
I mean, hey,
I don't know.
I'm guilty of not exactly being sweet and polite myself, but
Yeah. I don't know. I'll pray about it as we say, literally pray about that. But at any rate, personally, if I may, again, forgive me for sounding like this, but going to the third winter, each winter is getting worse. Um, yeah, I'm really destitute. So um, what I'm asking for is not a handout, but a boost. I'm going to do a Kickstarter so I can finally get these works of fiction published. I need help doing that. Um, so look for that in the future. I haven't got set up and got the banking thing going on, so I need to get that set up before I can share that
yeah.
link.
I
But
just want to mention something. Sorry, there's this guy that this the usual Muslim thing. Lloyd. The last time that Sheikh Shiton Shu came to America, over 500 people became Muslim because of him. And on Digital Minbar's channel, a Greek, Nicodemus' own people, Orthodox priest, accepted Islam. Dude, we've heard every version of this story, okay, about how Sheikh Fitzpatrick, whatever, converted to Islam, and then whenever he got, dude, we've heard this story. It's propaganda. It's laughably funny. Although what I do strongly suggest that you do is to watch these videos by like this one by ex-Muslims of America. It's fantastic. The tsunami of apostasy, of the amount of Muslims leaving Islam, because these are very famous, very well-known, very powerful sheikhs talking about how 30%, 25%, it was 15%, now it's 20%, now it's 30% of Muslim youth have all left Islam and are not coming back, and how we are losing Muslims in droves, and there's an apostasy, tsunami, a tidal wave of apostasy. So yeah, this is by these same scholars. So Sheikh Uthman, that's all funny and well, but then you see more famous Muslims than him telling us there's a massive apostasy. Great stuff. Great stuff.
yep.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's I've got someone who, how can I put this in layman's, forgive my English here, people. Looks like I have someone who's got a heart on for me, which is common in Islam, given the guy who worships. Yeah, I've got inspired by Mahmoud here. I've got another video coming up. Speaking of which, it's called "The Night of the Jinn," where Kutham, aka Mahmoud, it gets ridden all night by hundreds and hundreds of naked jinn because he wants to stand outside of his own circle. I guess because he likes it that way. So look for that. It's a short. I'm sure, especially you, Mahmoud, would love it. Um, yeah, and the more you provoke me, the more videos I'll put up in your honor.
Rightio. So yeah. As you know, Satan became a Muslim as well because it fitted right in there with his philosophy, ideas, and preferences, right? So that's why we know that Satan is a Muslim, because Islam is exactly what demons need to be following. And then, of course, if you think about it, Epstein Island, I mean, maybe he was a Muslim too,
Right.
because Islam does allow the kind of diddling that he was into. So yeah. So anyway, so guys, thank you. I guess. Sorry, Nico.
Yeah, no, that's what I was. Yeah, that's what I started this presentation with. Basically, the parallels. I mean, it boils down to this: you're either with Christ or not. If you're not with Christ, then you engage in these behaviors, and that includes the fallen Christian. The Christians that deviate from Christianity are the ones that are guilty of doing these things. By the way, which is the exact opposite of cults like Islam,
Yeah.
which promote it and enforce it.
Yeah. And Muhammad did says that Islam will slink like a snake between the two mosques and sink back into its hole. So, buddy, run into your hole. Off you go. So
Sahih Muslim, what is it? 416? Is it
yeah,
416?
whatever it is. I mean, it's Daif Bukhari for all I know. But
Right.
guys, thank you. Let's call it a night, and we'll convene this another time. We'll have another talk in the future. So, guys, thanks for joining us. It's been fascinating. It's been interesting, and yeah, think about what you're consuming in terms of media and the consequences of media. And I will be on tomorrow night with Steve Mushni or Hussein Mushni. I'll be
Nice.
on tomorrow night with him, just taking it easy. And I haven't confirmed for Sunday. I should be on with Thunderous One. He and I will do that. And I will be at the shooting range on Sunday. They're doing some training with somebody, so we'll see. I might run late. Who knows? So, guys, thank you very much.
Sorry,
I'll be learning to shoot and learning to put holes in things, and so should you. You never know; might be useful in the future.
Lloyd, if I may. Sorry, I just want to plug the shilling moment. Just one more minute, so I can do that. Because it's these projects that I'm obviously a passionate person, as you can see, and these projects are things that, again, the first one, this first children's book that I wrote, that's been completed for years, but I can't afford a professional editing for it, over 100 pages long. It's about single parents, broken homes, which is it is both written for both the parents and children. It's a great book, so I need help getting that published. The book that I've just started putting together, inspired by one of my students, is on grooming. He said, "Why don't you do one on grooming?" And I've come up with an idea, which is a brilliant. I can't. It's not copyrighted yet, so I can't share what that's about. But it's probably gonna be my best work. But again, I need help doing this. So please, if you can, look for my Kickstarter coming either on my channel or somewhere, whatever, in the very near future, so I can get these kinds of projects out there. I think, yeah, you'll be doing me a big service. Hopefully, I could.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you
guys.
again for having me, Lloyd. God bless you.
You're welcome.
Keep on.
Good night, everyone. God bless.